No, sir.
Yes.
It's okay, I'm from California. It's a good time now. Chad, it passed. So many of you asked the question many times, could you pass the rule? I understand why you asked the question, but now I just want to let you know that the rule has passed, and let's understand what the rule is. That means we'll be bringing up 4 of the appropriation bills we've been trying to do since July. Finally, we got the members together to be able to make that happen. If we're able to finish those 4 along with the ones we already, that would make it 73% of all the discretionary funds that we're supposed to appropriate for this time. Now, if anybody can answer the question, how much has the Senate passed? How many appropriation bills? Oh, that's 0. No, that's not true. We have passed, so you're wrong. Go back to school on that one. The Senate has done nothing this entire time. The House will continue to act and lead to make this happen. Another thing with Republicans taking the majority of something we just learned today that we would not know. President Biden had lied to Americans again. What we have just found on a trip in 2013, while he was vice president, taking the vice president plane to China, his son, Hunter Biden, went with him. His son made sure he set up to be able to shake hands quickly with Jonathan Lee, a Chinese individual. We now have found today that when President Biden was running for the presidency, when he told the American people that my family has never received money from China, is wrong. We now found today that there were 2 checks wired from Beijing, from Jonathan Lee, $250,000, to Hunter Biden, and you know the address was Joe Biden's home. Now, I'm not sure if Hunter was living there at the time, because in his book, he says he was living in California at that time. His attorney said he had never, the Biden's attorney said they had never received money from this individual. That was a lie. We also found out this individual, not only did he become good friends with Hunter Biden, the president said he never talked business and never worked. Devin, Hunter Biden's partner, says no. Joe Biden called in. We've now found that Joe Biden not only became friends with this individual, he wrote letters of recommendations for his children for college. So this idea that when the president told us they never received money from China, that's wrong. Not only did they receive money from China, the money, what was wired, used the address of then Vice President Joe Biden. That Vice President Joe Biden took his son to China, where he met this individual that they were doing business with. He even wrote letters of recommendation, Joe Biden did, for the children. So all this talk of what Joe Biden has said has not been true to the American public. And we just found that out today. As we continue to walk through and get these appropriation bills done, we see the other failure of President Biden, our southern border. Every single day, Americans are dying from the fentanyl. We see trains of illegal individuals coming up through there. We see our border agents bloodied in the fights that are happening at the border. The president continues to ignore it, but no more. The policies have only shifted by his presidency. The president needs to secure our border. We will move a continuing resolution, bring a rule to the floor to secure our border and keep government open. Why are we doing this? Because America's asking for it. In Massachusetts, a state far away from the southern border, where there's not one Republican member from Congress from Massachusetts, the governor has declared an emergency based upon the illegal immigration. The governor of New York tells those who are coming to go somewhere else. The mayor of New York City says it's destroying his city. El Paso mayor says it's about to cripple them. These are Democratic leaders that are calling out for this president to do something. We are going to give Democrats and this president the opportunity to actually do that and keep this government open. And hopefully the Senate will be able to start moving some appropriation bills. With that, let me introduce the Congresswoman from New York, who can explain to you the #1 issue in New York that the mayor and the governor talks about is the illegal immigration that's coming into their city. Congresswoman Malliotakis.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. This morning, our city put out an advisory that the people of the city of New York should carry around Narcan with them. That's how bad the fentanyl crisis has gotten. Recommending the citizens of New York walk around with Narcan. We had a 1-year-old baby die last week at a daycare center where there was a drug ring in the basement of that facility. Between the bail law of New York that allows drug traffickers and drug dealers back onto our streets and the open border, this is the crisis that we're seeing, unprecedented. In addition to that, our mayor has already said that this crisis will destroy New York City. He is well on his way to bankrupting New York City by saying New Yorkers have to pay to provide the housing and every other service for citizens of other countries. Today in court, and I'm part of a lawsuit, the judge in the New York Supreme Court actually struck that down and said that there is no precedent for that. There is no law that says that the mayor needs to provide this housing. So we're urging the mayor to stop and instead tell the president to secure our border. This was a school that's closed, a Catholic school that went to now it's supposed to be a public school, at 1,000 classrooms taken away from our families and turned over to migrants. Yesterday, I was with a 95-year-old veteran who was among senior citizens who were forced to leave an assisted living facility on Staten Island, only so the nonprofit organization that runs it turned around and entered a shady deal with the mayor to provide migrant housing. Tomorrow, Natural Resources will be having a hearing on our federal parkland being taken over to provide encampments. This is out of control. It is completely out of control, not only from a fiscal standpoint. Taxpayers in New York can't afford it. The mayor's saying a 15% cut across the board. We are in $33 trillion debt in this country. If the mayor wants more money, I don't know where he thinks it's going to come from. But as the Speaker said, it is dangerous. It is dangerous for everybody involved. It is dangerous for those people who are dying from fentanyl, from the drug traffickers that are bringing it over. It is dangerous for the migrants who are taking this treacherous journey. The president should not encourage that. Why is the president encouraging a process that enriches the drug cartels and allows them to overrun our Customs and Border Protection? We need to get this done. We need to secure the border in this process, and it is shameful that the leader of the House and the president of the Senate are from New York and have said nothing about this. Nothing, not a word about the crisis that their mayor is saying is destroying the city of New York. With that, I yield back.
Thank you.
I would like to introduce my good friend, August, who has been a real leader on this issue and goes to show you that this crisis from the southwest of the United States to the northeast of New York.
Everybody's talking about a shutdown, and that's all that's been in the news. I'm talking about a shutdown, too. We need the southern border to be shut down. I just came from Eagle Pass yesterday, and if you want to talk about heartbreak and tragedy, meet the woman that was brutally assaulted, kidnapped, separated from her husband, 30 stitches in the back of her head, kicked in the face by cartel members. I blame Joe Biden for that, for allowing the cartels to have operational control of the southern border, for allowing the cartels to smuggle and traffic over 7.5 million people in the last 2.5 years, for allowing over 150 people who match the terror watch list to enter this country illegally just this year. Failed policies, not allowing our Border Patrol agents to actually do the national security mission. Only 10% of our agents right now today are in the field protecting our country from those people who are trying to evade capture. I blame President Biden for the 53 migrants south of San Antonio in the July heat that roasted in the back of a tractor trailer. That's not humane. It is his failed policies that have led us to this point. We passed the most comprehensive and the best border security bill in decades. That bill needs to go to the Senate, and the president needs to make a decision. If he wants to keep the government open, he needs to shut down the border. Texans have had enough. The 100,000 families who have lost their loved ones due to the poisoning of fentanyl have had enough. Even my friends from states like Massachusetts, as the speaker mentioned, even Democrat friends are saying we're getting pressure to do something about the border. Come to Texas. Where is mainstream media? Go to Eagle Pass. Go meet the migrants that I met. Go hear their story through the Darien Gap, where I was at this summer. Go ask them. Go ask that young lady who was kidnapped by the cartel members what her story was. We have complete chaos there, and it is completely avoidable. Reinstate, remain in Mexico, have consequences. Every Border Patrol agent will tell you that there are no consequences. No border security, no funding. It's time to shut down the southern border. With that, I introduce my friend Claudia Tenney from New York.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to talk about the fact that we started a Northern Border Security Caucus. My colleague Ryan Zinke from Montana is going to speak about that as well. But it was so urgent what's happening at the southern border that we diverted all these Customs and Border Patrol agents to go from the northern border to the southern border. Now we have a crisis at the northern border, and we have huge issues with the Mexican cartels creating passports, shipping migrants, going on commercial flights, landing in Canada, getting to the cartels, getting them across the Canadian border, and once they get into New York, up in the Buffalo and Swanton sector, very dangerous parts of New York now because of the shift in focus, Kathy Hochul, our governor, issues legal driver's licenses, privileges reserved mostly to citizens and permanent residents, and now these driver's licenses can get them anywhere in the world. And when I met with the northern border agents, they said we are basically the same. It's an open border. They can go anywhere in the United States. And tragically, right after I visited the northern border, a family was killed in a marsh right on the border in the Swanton sector. And these people are coming across, they're being trafficked. It's a tragic situation, but they're also violating our laws, and they're also displacing and hurting the residents of upstate New York. So it isn't just New York City, although we have a lot of focus on New York City. We have a number of counties upstate that SUNY State University of New York campuses were taking migrants at the request of Kathy Hochul, who welcomed them in. Then these migrants wouldn't leave when the students went back to college in August. Now we have incidents in Erie County, up in the northern end of the state, near Buffalo. We have tuberculosis cases. We have a rape case. We have a sexual assault case. We have numerous crimes being committed. Migrants aren't willing to they have to be evicted now by the border security and our local governments. We had a murder in Rensselaer County from an illegal immigrant, and it continues to happen. And the taxpayers of New York are paying for this. It's $11 million a day to bring these, to house these migrants in New York City, and they're being shifted upstate because Mayor Adams has, rightly blamed Joe Biden, as we all do. But Kathy Hochul has been an accomplice on this. She has been part of not standing up to President Biden, and incredibly, she came to Washington to see President Biden to talk about this issue, and he didn't have time for her. She finally got to catch him at a fundraiser in New York City recently, but there's still no solutions, and still, our speaker, as my colleague from Staten Island mentioned, our speaker from New York City has said nothing about this. Our majority leader, from the state of New York, who travels around the state proudly with his sign that says, "Come meet Chuck Schumer," hasn't spoken with our residents of upstate New York, among the most beleaguered taxpayers in the nation, who are coming up with the money to house these migrants at their own expense. And so that's why we formed the Northern Border Security Caucus. The northern border states, it's a very long border. It's very porous now because we don't have the resources we need. And it is time to close the border. It's time to give the agents the resources they need. And it's time to make sure that the Democrats stand up and stand for the American people. This is an 82% winner in New York State. The polling shows 82% of residents in New York across all demographics and all parties support doing something about the migrants and making sure that this burden isn't on the taxpayers. And we've been fighting for this for a long time, and now the taxpayers are speaking out. In my district, which is not Erie County, I kudos to my local governments. They have stood up and done emergency orders and have refused to take the migrants in spite of Kathy Hochul's order and our governor. And the problems have been alleviated to some extent. And this is a real problem that we've got to resolve. And we are standing strong on this. It must be passed. I know everyone's talking about shutdowns, but this border issue is the issue of the day. It is the most important issue we face as a nation. It's undermining the wealth, and I talk about relative wealth of our senior citizens, our taxpayers who are dependent on whether it's their Social Security or their small 401ks or pensions. They are paying for this in upstate New York. We are paying with unfunded mandates for this crisis, and it's looking like $5 billion is going to cost by the end of the year. Kathy Hochul, our governor, has already put $1 billion in new taxes against the taxpayers of New York to pay for this crisis, and it's all coming upstate, and it's completely unfair to us. And we're going to continue to put forward a bill, and I think this bill is great. It's comprehensive. I give kudos to the Speaker and everyone who has contributed to making this bill comprehensive, humane, and something that's going to benefit our citizens. It's going to benefit our taxpayers, and it's going to be giving us an alternative to this disaster we're seeing at our border. So I just want to say thank you so much for Ryan Zinke, my colleague from Montana. The congressman has been a real leader in the Northern Border Security Caucus, and I just want to introduce him. Just say a few words. Thank you.
And I'll make my remarks short. So where are we? We agreed as a caucus that we'd go through regular order. Last time regular order was Denny Rehberg had my seat. It's been decades. So we'd agreed to have 12 bills. We agreed on two fundamental things. We would curb spending and we would remove the woke. And we did on all bills. 10 of the 12 bills are through, and we'll get the other two through. Now before us are the three, in my opinion, three of the most critical. We've passed VA and MILCON, and we kept that whole because we're going to keep our promise to our veterans. Defense. We segregated out largely Ukraine because I think that deserves a discussion from the administration. What are our goals and objectives? But defense, we got rid of the woke. And look, I don't think the government and our military should be paying for sex change operations and hormone therapy for new recruits. And they are. And they are. So enough. So let's get back to the basics on defending the country. So what we're about to do is we've passed the Veteran Affairs and MILCON. We will pass defense to defend our country, and we will pass security, homeland security. And Ukraine, a lot of people don't see Ukraine. A lot of Americans don't know where Ukraine on a map. You ask a lot of Americans, where's Nebraska? It's one of the square states out there, right? Well, you ask them where the Dunbar is. Where's Crimea? A lot of people don't know. They don't know. So, but our border, they do know, because we see it in every city. And it's not just on the northern border, the southern border. We see it in Billings, Montana, as we do in New York. We see the problem with not having a border. And what the border security does is, people ask me, what does it look like? Well, it looks about 32 feet tall and about 1,000 miles long. And it empowers the Border Patrol and ISIS to do their job. It gives more sophistication on the border. But our Border Patrol and agents, they need some help on rules of engagement. So it does that. So the critical things before us as a country and a Congress is, look, you see the problems we have. You see the votes. But surely this caucus and America will stand behind, let's secure our border, let's defend our country, and let's honor our veterans. And if we can get that far, we're in a little trench warfare, we'll admit it, but even a couple yards is a long ways in trench warfare. So I'm an optimist that we'll get through that, and I thank the Speaker's leadership on it. The other thing, from a secretary, I got to tell you, I was secretary during the last shutdown. And I can tell you, a secretary has a lot of latitude on what we deem critical and essential. When I was secretary, I didn't shut down the parks. I didn't shut down inspections on our oil rigs. I didn't shut down transportation. I didn't shut down permits. But, you know, when a shutdown becomes political, you can do a lot of harm as a secretary to the innocent. For instance, what happens to our military when they don't get paid? You know, as a commander, is that most of our military operates under the poverty line. For a lot of junior enlisted, they get about $10 an hour, which equates to 40 hours of work week. And I can tell you when you're in deployment, you do a lot more than 40 hours. So when you threaten the pay of a petty officer or a corporal, what does that mean? It means probably not going to make a car payment, probably going to miss rent, young family starting, diapers, groceries. We get it, right? So what I don't want to do is I don't want to put in jeopardy the people that are serving this country over a political argument. So, you know, I'm an optimist. We have great leadership. But I think America also knows that we want to do the right thing. We said when we come in office, we'd do two things. We'd curb the spending, and we'd remove the woke. And we did. And I think everyone agrees the right thing to do is pass the appropriation bills and then move to the Senate to negotiate them and come and do our job as a Congress. So with that, thank you. It's going to be a long night for everybody. God bless, and Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you. One thing we have found is we want to make sure government stays open as we do our work. We're going to be here working late tonight. The Senate has not passed anything yet, but it really comes down to the president. He has people across this nation, from Massachusetts, New York, any place, calling on him to secure our border, which we want the president. The only reason the border is not secure today is based upon his own personal policies. He can change that overnight. We're asking the president to do just that. Yes, sir.
When do you plan on putting a CR on the floor?
We've got these 4 bills coming up, so this will take us to Thursday, probably on Friday. We'll be able to do it. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker,
Hold it to it. Yes.
can you please comment on the CR that the Senate leaders just rolled out this afternoon?
You know, I don't see. Have they passed that?
They just unveiled it.
All right. Ask me when they pass.
They had the
them.
first procedural vote, though, and it passed with widespread bipartisan
All
support.
right. So let me know.
Mr. Speaker, that said, there's 77 members, bipartisan, voted over there on the motion to proceed. Is there some sort of a disconnect between you and Mitch McConnell on this? Obviously, he sees this differently. He said as much on the floor, which is very different from what you're saying
I would see
tonight.
something much different if they want to put and focus on Ukraine and not focus on the southern border. I think their priorities are backwards.
Mr. Speaker, we all have heard you say, and we know what the Senate has and has not done. You are the leader of the House. I want to ask you a question about the House.
Sure.
How do you explain to Americans that the House has waited until now to get these appropriations bills moving when clearly you've known for months that this was the deadline?
Well, I've been trying to move them for months. You've been following the House for a long time, right?
My question: why did you fail to get that done until now?
So when did we post them at Rules Committee? Well, if you're asking the question that we failed, then we've been waiting. So the question to you is, when were they posted at Rules to be brought up? The answer would be July. So that would be a long time ago, right? Unfortunately, in a tight majority like this, 4 members can stop anything. So a number of members have been stopping the rule from coming up. Now we were able to get members in a better place and be able to move forward. But the great thing is, I never give up. So the deadline's not yet. And we're working. We'll work late into the night. So if your deadline is for a paper to be done in school, but you still get it done on the day, does it still work? Yeah. So we'll do it. Yes, ma'am.
I talked to a number of the same people last night and say they are still not for CR, even if you guys ask for 2. Why do you think the dynamic is going to be any?
Because I don't understand how a Republican is going to sit and support what is currently happening on the border and defend President Biden on keeping the border wide open. I don't understand how someone can do that. I mean, I'm hearing from Democrats that want something done there. So I'm not quite sure how they would defend that position.
Speaker McCarthy, have you spoken to Leader McConnell about that bipartisan proposal that they put forward to avert the government shutdown? And at this point, is that something that you're going to review at this point? You seem a little dismissive of it. Will you put it off until something actually gets passed?
I think in the House, we'll take up ours. I did talk to Leader McConnell tonight. Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to take up the House CR with the border security no matter where the vote count is? Or
Yeah.
only if the vote count is solid?
No, we're going to take it up. Yes, ma'am. Can you what?
Can I ask, are you going to be able to pass these 4 appropriations bills Will you only bring up a CR if you pass all four?
No. I'll bring up the CR regardless.
Regardless.
Because remember what it is. This is a stopgap funding to keep government open and securing the border. I don't know anyone who's opposed to that. I think that's where people would want to be. We have something much different. You know, one of the things when we took the majority, we wanted to change Washington. First of all, you see people in the building. Members have to show up to vote, no proxy voting. The other thing is change the behavior where you can individually bring bills up, something we've been trying for months to get done. Luckily, we finally have some members to be able to solve that problem. The other thing that we found is we allow amendments, right? So we have hundreds of amendments to take up in these bills. So members on both sides of the aisle can bring up ideas. So we'll see as we go through that to make sure if bills change that we can be able to pass them.
Can you pass these 4 bills, though, do you think?
I think we're going to work very hard, and I think we're going to get them passed, yes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you.
I'll come back.
A few CR proposals have been floated last week on the House GOP side. Could you give a bit more details about where yours include, like a top line, for example?
Okay, go look at the rules that we posted, and you'll find out the one we did, yes.
But just a similar question, will it be a lower spending level or a CR to extend the current spending levels?
No, it'll be a lower level.
Would it be that 1.471 trillion?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
If the House passes its CR on Friday, and let's say hypothetically the Senate passes its CR, are you going to try to conference those, or what would the process there be if we see 2 different CRs?
Well, we're both separate bodies, and that's normally how we deal with it. We go to conference, just like we would do as we pass our appropriation bills, and if the Senate eventually passes theirs, we'd go to conference. That's why you would keep government open while you're dealing in conference with the differences.
Mr. Speaker, if the House doesn't pass the CR on Friday and the Senate does give you one, what's the play then? Do you amend the sentence? Do you send it back? How do you move forward?
Ask me then.
Matt Gaetz made another threat to your speakership on the House floor today. Are you worried at all that
No.
he'll bring up a CR? I mean, what do you make of the threats? He's made them for quite a while. Do you?
Have you seen Matt and what he said about me when we first started this? Look, people have got to get over personal differences. I'm focused on America. I think that's where America's looking right now as well. He never voted for me to start out with. I don't assume he's changing his position. He said a lot of things, and we waited through. The one thing I will always tell you is I'm never going to give up on America, and that's where my focus is going to be. If somebody has a personal difference with me, that's fine. They have the right to say it. They have the right to do it. Do whatever they can.
Has that distracted this process, though, when he keeps hammering you on this? Is that a problem? I mean, he comes out every day with a little more pushing the envelope.
Does it look like it bothers me?
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
No. If it doesn't...
But is that distracting from this whole issue to fund the government, address
No, but it seems to do something for you.
Well, no, we're just getting
Go
a lot
ahead.
of copy.
Would you all be willing to accept any CR that doesn't have those border provisions? Like, is there any way that you all would make it?
Look, we look across this country, what's happening to our country, based upon the president's policies. I think it's incumbent upon the president to sit down and work on securing this border. We passed H.R. 2 when the Senate did not. We passed a bill to lower the gasoline price to make us energy independent. The Senate did not and didn't do anything there. We actually took up a parent's bill of rights, so parents have a say in their kids' education. The Senate did nothing there. But we've watched what's gone on, and we passed a bill that we can secure our border. We think this is an opportune time that everybody can work together. There are a number of Democratic leaders across the country that are crying out for it, that are saying their state is in a state of emergency. It's interesting. Leader Schumer comes from New York. His governor is crying out. His mayor is crying out. Well, shouldn't he listen to them too? I think that would be important.
How likely is it?
Yes, sir.
About 10 years ago, around the same time, people were preparing for a shutdown caused by the House Republicans of the repealing of Obamacare. In about 16 days, nothing much came out of it aside from the Murray-Ryan deal. Why would a shutdown of the border security be any different?
Because you don't have to repeal anything. These are simply the president's policies. And you've got now the #1 killer of Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. 300 Americans will be poisoned and died today. That's the equivalent of an airliner crashing. So I think that would make a difference. I've watched millions of people now come across this border. I've watched states say it's a state of emergency. I think that matters. If the president doesn't think that matters, I think that's a difference of opinion. But I think the rest of America believes it matters.
Speaker.
Yes.
The Senate CR has FAA reauthorization until the end of the year. Is
that something you guys would accept at all in your version?
So we passed an FAA bill, right? Did the Senate pass an FAA bill? Oh, no, they didn't do that either. So the one thing that, when I became Speaker, I wanted to change how Washington works. The Senate would never even bring appropriation bills through committee. So we put in the debt ceiling, a 1% cut across the board if you didn't do your job. So kudos. They actually passed the bills in committee. That was a change. But I don't think that's the way you govern. I mean, name me all the bills that the Senate have passed. Okay, I can still wait. I believe the best way to do it, they're a different body than we are. They should pass bills, we can pass them, and we can go to conference and solve it.
Speaker,
all right, last question.
I just had if you can just explain a little bit more your stance on the Ukraine funding. I know you said it would be, you want to consider it in a supplemental. Is it the wrong move for that deal from the Senate to include additional funding for Ukraine?
Yes. Yes, it is wrong. I just went out to Maui and watched the devastating fires of Americans killed. I've been to California, watched the floods and the hurricanes, Florida, Vermont, Ohio, and a train derailment. They're picking Ukraine over Americans. Look, I know there's problems out there. What Russia has done is wrong. And we can defend that. But we also what is watching happen right here in America right now. Why can't we deal with the border and our emergencies too? Why is that taking? They have money already. They have enough money to carry them through for the next 45 days in Ukraine. But why does that take precedence over what's happening on the border? Why does that take precedence over the 300 families that are going to lose their loved ones every single day in America? What does that do? Why can't we do these things and get them done? Look, this isn't that difficult to happen. All the president has to do, call us up, let's go sit down and get this done before the end of the week. He's changed this by a simple stroke of his own words of how this border is happening. He can change it back, just like the Democratic governor of New York, the Democratic governor of Massachusetts, the Democratic governor of New Jersey, the Democratic mayor of New York, the Democrat mayor of El Paso is crying out for him to do. So don't take it from my words. Take it from the millions of people across America that are asking something to happen. I want to keep the government open. I want to do the job. I know we're going to have to give the Senate more time. They haven't passed FAA. They haven't passed a border security bill. They haven't passed an appropriation bill yet. Are they still here by chance? Oh, okay then. I rest my case.